This is Internet Marketing. Brought to you by Site Visibility at sitevisibility.co.uk. This is Internet Marketing. Now, before we start today, we'd like to encourage anyone looking for help with their digital marketing to get in touch with Site Visibility. Whether you have a burning digital marketing question or you're just looking for an agency to work with, they'd love to hear from you. So give them a call, +44 1273 733 433, or you can fill out the form at sitevisibility.co.uk/contact, or you can talk to either Scott or Sean via the live chat function on the site. They'd be more than happy to help. Now today I'm joined by Dale Bertrand, e-commerce SEO specialist at Fire and Spark. Dale, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm very good, and thank you so much for coming on. Now, you're based, is it up in Massachusetts?
Yes, so Cambridge, right across the river from Boston. So the home of Harvard and MIT.
So it's a very sort of educational area you're physically located in.
Yes, I have some very educated neighbors around me.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? It's called Cambridge. Our Cambridge is quite educated as well. So
yeah, well, there's a strong link historically between the two. So it's not a coincidence.
I was wondering if that was the case. That was actually quite a nice segue, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and Fire and Spark.
Yeah, so for me, I have a technical background, so I'm coming at SEO from a background in software and web development, building apps and websites and all that good stuff. For the last 10 years, I've been focused on digital marketing. So when I was working as a software developer, I was hired to a startup because they needed somebody to run their online marketing with a technical bent. So I ended up working at that startup and then working with a couple clients, and that turned into the agency that I run now. So now I run Fire and Spark. We're an e-commerce marketing agency in Kendall Square, Cambridge, and we work with clients, established brands, startups, e-commerce sites on a number of different platforms that are just getting started on the other end of the spectrum.
And I love the fact that you used to be a software engineer. I nearly said programmer then. I always feel that's such a dated term. Oh, you're a programmer.
Yes,
you're a computer programmer.
But that's just funny because I call myself a former DevOps developer now, which is the right terminology. But
yeah, DevOps. Yes, that term has been around for a while, hasn't it? I still don't fully understand what it means. But anyway, yeah, so you're coming at things from a sort of more of a sort of technical bent, I guess. And what we're going to be talking about today is the difference in e-commerce, or the approach to e-commerce between sort of not e-commerce, but the difference in SEO between sort of e-commerce sites and non-e-commerce sites. I'll let you start with that, Dale. Sort of what would be a good starting point in a discussion around that?
yeah, Andy, so you and I were talking earlier about a bunch of these differences, and really you could imagine in the e-commerce world, a lot of sites are selling products that are also sold elsewhere on the web. So you're carrying other brands, and you're publishing product descriptions that appear on other websites. So if you think about it, that's duplicate content. If a product is sold on 100 different websites on the web, only one of them can be in the number one position for the keywords that you care about. And your Google doesn't need all of you is really what it comes down to. So they're going to show the top 10 on the search results page. So there's that, and then also, we have the make or break holiday season, which can be really tough for a lot of retailers and online retailers, where they're making a huge percentage of their revenue around the holiday season. And from an SEO perspective, we've got to figure out how to do SEO with seasonality in mind. Another thing that I like to think about is like link building. So we all know, or if folks in your audience have done SEO in the past, we all know that authority matters and links to websites matter to raise your authority. And getting links to e-commerce websites is tough. You could imagine, and just as an example, because we're talking about the difference between e-commerce and non-e-commerce, you could imagine a site that sells socks. I worked with a client that had a sock website, and imagine that versus a site that is more of a blog about sustainability or something like that people care about and they write about, there's passions about, and you can get involved in the conversation, get some links, and build some authority. On the e-commerce side, using the sock site as an example, it's really hard to get people excited about socks. That you're doing PR. How do you do PR around socks? How do you do that in a way that you're doing anything remarkable so that you're starting a conversation? We don't really think about it that way. So a lot of e-commerce sites are in that situation. And then another thing is content, like content generation. So what is the content? Like, it makes a lot of sense that we're building out product pages. We want those product pages to rank. But what I've seen a lot for e-commerce sites is an e-commerce site that's a collection of products like we think about, but it also has a blog. And the blog is where they do their SEO content. And that can really be tricky.
Interesting that you mentioned the make or break. Was it the holiday season, referring specifically to Christmas? I don't think a lot of people realise just quite some companies, they do do they do most of their business over that sort of 2-week period?
Oh, yeah, there are some, absolutely. Just depends on how seasonal they are. Yeah. The e-commerce sites that we work with, we have some that do most of their business around the holiday season. And then we have others that they don't have that strong seasonality. It just really depends on what they sell.
And you mentioned link building there, which of course is a huge area. We could probably talk all night about link building. But you mentioned that it was difficult with e-commerce, but just how difficult? What are some of the sort of techniques you can use? Because you mentioned that other websites they might be more bloggy and people might be more sort of passionate about the subjects, but if you've got a very dry sort of e-commerce site, how do you build links?
Well, so the answer is to not have a dry e-commerce site. Yeah. So that's really what it comes down to. So it depends on what you're selling. So some e-commerce sites are owned by a brand, and they basically they've got their brand. They know who their audience is. And that really comes down to doing research, understanding what your audience is interested in, and giving them the type of content that they want that's useful to them. Other sites, you can imagine a jewelry site that's selling a lot of brands, and with them, it comes down to useful content where the way that I would think about it for a jewelry site is thinking about a jewelry store. Like if I were to walk into a jewelry retail store, I could have a conversation with the jeweler. I can ask questions about materials, about the workmanship, about I have a watch that I happen to be wearing right now. I walked into a jeweler to have the bracelet resized, and he just gave me a ton of information that I didn't know about setting this particular watch and things like that. So that's useful. Like that's useful information. And you can imagine trying to get, if you were a jewelry e-commerce site, trying to get that same level of useful info, whether it's blog articles or adding useful information to the product pages or category pages or collection pages on the site. But I think really what it comes down to is not to have a dry e-commerce site and to think about what type of content you could build that would be super useful to the people that you're targeting. A lot of times I work with an e-commerce site that hasn't really done the foundational work to think about who their audience is and how they're differentiated in their space. So it really does start with that.
Now, what are your feeling on customer reviews? Because obviously that helps to establish, I suppose, a degree of trust with the search engines. But I know it's difficult to get customers to leave reviews. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's tough, and that's one of the reasons why e-commerce SEO is hard. You tend to see customers that have either a very positive experience or very negative experience as the ones who are writing reviews, and usually it's the ones with the very negative experience. So what we always talk about is incentivizing like your best customers to leave reviews, and that's reviews on your website, Google reviews that you can submit on the Google search results page or through one of these third-party software vendors that allows you to do it, like Trustpilot and Approved Shopper could help with that. And then there's also product reviews. A lot of the clients that we're working with are giving away product to influencers to get reviews on influential blogs or social media and get that kind of promotion. And that works, but it all really depends on what ecosystem you fit in. If you're selling, let's say paper straws, and the ecosystem that off the top of my head that you could naturally fit into is eco-conscious restaurants or something like that.
Yeah.
So if that's your ecosystem, then building out on the link building side, building out content that they would be interested in, getting them to link to you, selling your product and getting vendors to link to you, that sort of thing, that could really help. And when I say, sorry, I meant to say customers that are linking to you, get them to link to you.
Now, what about, because you mentioned about, when I was talking about a dry e-commerce site, and you said, oh no, don't do a dry e-commerce site, have some good information on there, some helpful information on there, which is all content. Well, what are your thoughts on content? I mean, do you think it should be outsourced?
Well, okay, so that there's a lot of different types of content you could do. I mean, there's some brands out there that are doing really well with video, articles, all kinds, and email. And there's some brands that just do really kick butt with email marketing. But from an SEO perspective, when we're thinking about content, we're usually thinking about keyword targeting. So what content can we create that would target specific keywords that we know that we want to rank for? And what ends up happening there is it can be quite expensive and time consuming to write articles, which is the first thing that people think of. I usually like to think of alternatives to writing articles, like basically things like building a collection page. So imagine if you decide you want to go after a keyword like holiday gifts or something like that. You can write an article that's a gift guide. You could also build out a collection, and that would end up being easier at the end of the day. And then other forms of content could be more like an FAQ. And we're all familiar with frequently asked questions on websites. We like to structure them so that you have one question per page, so that it's more likely that you're going to get ranked in Google when people are asking that question or something similar.
Now, you mentioned other sorts of media. What are your thoughts on sort of video, sort of podcasts, things like that?
Video can be great. And at the end of the day, it's about building for SEO. So just to start from the beginning here, for SEO, search engines like Google are text-based. So at the end of the day, you're really trying to get people who are typing certain keywords to come to your site. So you're building out content that you want to rank for those keywords. So if you're doing something like video can be really useful and compelling, great content. You could use it to build linkable content. So at the end of the day, if you're building video, you'd end up putting it on a page on your website, maybe a product page or a category page or something like that. And the way it'll help you, like I said, it'll generate links if it's high quality. And then also it could help with conversion rate, which is obviously huge in the e-commerce space. But then it could also help with engagement metrics that Google's looking at. Like just the fact that it's a useful page means that people are less likely to bounce back to the search results page after they click on it in Google. And that's something that Google can measure.
So if you had one top tip or a takeaway for our audience today, Dale, what might it be?
So something that I always think about when I'm working with a new e-commerce site is how I could build a community around the brand and what would that look like? Is that a forum? Is that FAQ? Is that me looking at questions I've gotten from customers and figuring out how to turn that into content? But some of the sites that we've worked with that have really been like a rocket ship when it comes to organic traffic and SEO have done really good job of positioning their brand in a way that they've built a community or an ecosystem around their brand and their e-commerce site. And what that ends up generating at the end of the day is engagement metrics that Google wants to see, and content. A lot of times that's user-generated content, so that you're not outsourcing and paying somebody or having somebody internally spend time on it. And then the other thing is links, if you can pull that off. But that's really, and not everybody can pull that off. It really depends on the resources you have, how you position your brand, and what the ecosystem online and the conversations that are going on around the types of products that you sell or the audience that you're going after with your products. But if you can build community, that can really be kind of a huge boost to your SEO.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Dale. How can our listeners find out more about you and more about Fire and Spark?
So there's the website, fireandspark.com, and I'm Dale at fireandspark.com, DALE, if anybody's interested in reaching out. If you have any questions about SEO, I'm always happy to field questions, so reach out.
Thank you very much, Dale. And thanks, listeners, for listening. The show notes will be in the usual place, sitevisibility.co.uk/IM podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a review, because that's really good. We like reviews. Questions and suggestions, and future topic suggestions, and even guest suggestions, send those to podcast@sitevisibility.co.uk. You can also tweet at Site Visibility, and remember that we have a Site Visibility group on LinkedIn. So that's all from me, Andy. And it's all from Dale.
All right, goodbye, Andy. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Dale. And we'll see you next time on Internet Marketing.